Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. The topic for today is the Zeigarnik Effect, and Sayali and I will be presenting on this topic. Right. What is a Zeigarnik effect? This effect was named after the Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, and it refers to the tendency to remember interrupted tasks and for them to be recalled better than completed tasks. Bluma Zeigarnik first saw this effect only so long as the order was in the process of being served and promptly forgot them as soon as it was finished. This observation of waiters became the starting point of a series of experiments by Zeigarnik. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So we'll be looking at the initial experiments by Zeigarnik first. In her experiments, Zeigarnik asked participants to complete a series of anywhere between 15 to 22 tasks, and these included tactile tasks like stringing beads or solving a puzzle. Half of the participants were allowed to complete their tasks, while the other half were interrupted halfway through, asking the participants to move on to something else. These tasks were intended to take somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes, and they were interrupted when the participant was most engrossed in the task. Then she removed the task from the subject's view, and after an hour's delay, asked the participants to recall the activities they had been involved in. The studies confirmed her initial hypothesis, and the number of unfinished tasks that participants recalled was significantly higher than the number of tasks that participants completed. Next slide. Thank you. In her subsequent experiments, she examined the recall for tasks interrupted at different times, and found that tasks that were interrupted at the middle or towards the end were more likely to be recalled than those interrupted near the beginning of work on them. She also conducted some variations in this experiment, like interrupting tasks, but then allowing them to immediately resume completing half of them. Again, she observed that participants were ultimately most likely to recall the task that she never allowed them to complete. She then told six participants that six of the interrupted tasks would be resumed and another six would not be, though no tasks were ever resumed. And once again, Zeigarnik found the results were the same, and um, she found that. Sally, can we move on to the next slide, please? Um, right. Once again, she found that regardless of whether or not she said the task would be resumed, all of the tasks that were interrupted were more likely to be remembered by the participants than those that the participants are not able to complete. Next slide. Okay. According to Zeigarnik's hypothesis, participants were more likely to remember the incomplete task because of something called the psychic tension. This was inspired by her mentor, Kurt Lewin, who postulated a theory of psychological tensions, where tensions were form of some sort of energy, and these psychic tensions they provide people with mental energy to prepare and bring about behavior. And when they perform this behavior, they are relieved of this tension. Once someone completes a task, this tension is released, longer uses significant cognitive effort to remember that task. Zeigarnik also found that people who expressed high levels of ambition were more likely to remember incomplete tasks than those who have average levels of ambition, and participants who believed that an incomplete task represented a failure were also more likely to remember incomplete tasks than those who had not. In other words, the more unfinished tasks that we have to keep track of, the more mental bandwidth we use and the more overwhelmed we feel. On to Siley. Siley, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, yes, you are.
I'm so sorry. So the psychological implications of Zeigarnik effect are as follows. The first one is memory and attention. So the Zeigarnik effect highlights unique aspects of the memory and attention. So, like we've discussed, incomplete tasks occupy more attention in our mind than the completed ones. This also means that the memory retention is way better for incomplete tasks. But this will have a negative impact on our attention because it will get divided with the preoccupation that our mind has with the incomplete task, which will also lead to decreased attention and concentration on the task at hand. So this will have a negative impact on not only the attention as well as on the memory retrieval due to cognitive overload and due to open loops. The next one is anxiety and stress. So the Zeigarnik effect tends to intensify feelings of anxiety and stress because the unfinished tasks will create a sense of mental burden. The pressure to complete these tasks can heighten the level of cortisol, which is also known as the stress hormones, and this will lead to higher levels of anxiety in individuals. And if an individual has long-term exposure to the Zeigarnik effect, it can have detrimental effects on mental health as well as physical health. The next one is procrastination and paralysis. So the Zeigarnik effect magnifies the importance of incomplete tasks, and they constantly tend to preoccupy one's mind, which will lead to anxiety. Due to this anxiety, individuals will engage in avoidance behaviors. So they might avoid initiating the task or they might prioritize short-term relief over their long-term goals. So when the individual delays the task, the pressure to complete that task becomes very overwhelming and it will lead to a cycle of procrastination because the individual wants to avoid the cycle of facing the anxiety associated with the incomplete task. The next one is decision making impairment. So the Zeigarnik effect impairs decision making process because cognitive resources are divided between the finished task and the unfinished task and the presenting task. So the unfinished task will intrude the cognitive processing and this is because it makes it difficult to evaluate consequences or weigh the available options that you have and things like that. It can also lead to impulsivity due to the pressure of the unfinished task, or the individual may try and avoid to make the decision altogether. The next one is cognitive impairment or overload. The persistent presence of unfinished tasks can lead to a sense of cognitive overload, which reduces the mental capacity for the other activities that the individual has at hand. And the cognitive resources that could be used for the problem solving or creative thinking are also diverted towards managing unfinished tasks and towards managing the anxiety caused by that. And lastly, it also has an impact on our interpersonal relationships because individuals are so preoccupied with the unfinished tasks during social interactions. They're constantly thinking about them, and this leads to decreased attentiveness and engagement in the conversations or activities with others. It can also lead the individual to feel extremely irritable or be really impatient in social situations. So next, let's take a look at strategies to overcome or therapeutic modalities that we can use to overcome the Zeigarnik effect. The first one is cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT has proved to be the most effective while dealing with the Zeigarnik effect. This is because CBT can help people to identify and challenge cognitive distortions, and it can use to address underlying beliefs and emotions that can contribute to procrastination as well as avoidance. It can also provide individuals with practical strategies for goal setting, for managing time, and for breaking tasks into manageable steps. The next one is behavioral activation. So, like we know, behavioral activation involves scheduling enjoyable and fulfilling activities to counteract the negative impact which is caused by the unfinished task. So, by engaging in these pleasurable activities, people can reduce their preoccupation with the incomplete tasks. Another way in which behavioral activation can be useful is through task initiation training. What this means is breaking down tasks into smaller steps and practicing initiating and completing each step. So, when an individual is gradually exposed to a task, it reduces avoidance behavior because the individual will not feel so overwhelmed. The next one is mindfulness based therapy. So, MBT can be useful because it leads to acceptance and non judgmental awareness. This can help people to observe their thoughts and emotions without judging them. And when we acknowledge that there is a presence of unfinished tasks, people can, be aware of their presence without getting entangled in them, and they can reduce the associated stress and anxiety with that task. Another way mindfulness can be helpful is while completing tasks, mindfulness can enhance your focus and concentration towards the task and be fully present in the present moment and the task at hand. And the last one is DBT. So DBT teaches individuals to tolerate distressing situations without being overwhelmed. So techniques in DBT such as self-soothing, the moment, or distraction can help individuals cope with the anxiety caused by the unfinished task. It can also help people to identify and regulate the intense emotions in a healthier manner, which can reduce the urge or to avoid the procrastination of tasks. So therapists can use a combination of these modalities, or CBT has been proven to be the most effective way to deal with Zeigarnik effect. Now let's take a look at the quiz. So what is the Zeigarnik effect? A, the tendency to remember completed tasks better than the unfinished one. B, the tendency to remember unfinished tasks better than the completed ones. And C, the tendency to procrastinate on tasks indefinite.
Right. You're absolutely right. The answer is B, the tendency to remember unfinished tasks but then completed ones.
Great.
Move on to the next.
The next one is, which of the following is a positive psychological implication of the Zeigarnik effect? A, increase stress and anxiety. B, improve memory for completed tasks. C, decrease motivation to complete tasks. And D, enhanced focus and concentration on unfinished tasks.
Yeah, everyone's answering D, which is the right answer. Enhanced focus and concentration on unfinished tasks.
All right, great. And the last question is, the Zeigarnik effect was found to be connected to a person's position in the task, that is in the beginning or the end, B, a person's ambition, C, a person's perception of failure in a task, D, all of the above.
Yes, the answer is D, all of the above.
All right, that's it. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.